All right, everyone. When it comes to the Global Compact for Migration, this seems to be a case of too little too late, because it was only yesterday, the 21st of November, that the Conservatives decided that in the House of Commons they were going to ask Justin Trudeau to pull out of the Compact for Migration. Now, as expected, he said he wasn't going to do it. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a pro-immigration legislation that Trudeau has ever disliked. I mean, he it definitely wouldn't, because a lot of his owners wouldn't like the fact that he's pulling out of agreements such as this. They're very pro-immigration from the people that we've seen, whether it happens to be Aga Khan or it happens to be George Soros. These people have always advocated on more immigration to Canada. But the Conservatives waited way too long on this to even bring it up. They didn't even make a peep about the Global Compact for Migration until October 30th, when Michelle Rempel ended up taking to Twitter and saying that she was going to be passing a motion that would pretty much allow for a review of the Compact for Migration, just more studies done on it, which is highly ineffective. Now, I believe this is what ended up happening, and it ended up going through because now they're starting to make a fuss about it. But it's way too late. Justin Trudeau is going to be signing this on either December 10th or December 11th. The Compact for Migration itself has been made available since 2017. I mean, even people in the media have been speaking about this, and their base has been speaking about this. People on YouTube have been speaking about this. It's been a lot of attention that's been brought up because of it. But the thing is nobody can make it give it national attention, unlike the actual government. Now, the media could, but the media has spoken very, very little about it. See, when I say the media has talked about it, it's been one or two articles that they say that where they brought it up. But the Conservatives should have been making waves about this months ago. There's no way that they didn't know about this Compact for Migration, and we knew about this agreement. But the idea of taking this fight to the House of Commons, it's not going to work. Not when the Liberals have a majority government, and it's clear they're not going to pull out of it. You have to make the waves with the Canadian people, because we may have taken notice to it, people who pay attention to politics and who are online every day discussing politics. We knew about this. The average Canadian doesn't, and I'm guaranteeing you the average Canadian would not like this idea of giving up our sovereignty when it comes to immigration. I mean, the compact will allow the UN to decide things such as numbers of immigrants that come to Canada. They will let them decide things like where these immigrants come from. And it doesn't have to do necessarily with refugees. It has to do with immigration. So you know that there's going to be a lot of economic migrants that are going to be coming through and going to be the ones that are actually coming over. I mean, just not too long ago, there was an article in the CBC talking about how they wanted Canada's population to be 100 million by the year 2100. This is an unrealistic number. You're going to up the Canadian population 2 or 3-fold. So the fact that they waited so damn long to actually bring this up, and they're not even making much waves about it, because they put the motion in through yesterday, and I mean, yeah, it's still early. They could still talk about it more, but you haven't seen any of them talking to the media about it. You haven't seen them taking to Twitter or trying to make national coverage of the Global Compact for Migration. This is the problem with this current Conservative opposition, is the fact that they're way behind what their base want. They're way behind what the Canadian people want. People have been talking about issues that Conservatives bring up. They'll be talking about it months before. The Conservatives will just talk about it, but then people like me, people like Frank Vaughan, people like Derek Rance, they'll already be talking about these issues way before the Conservatives ever do. So the Conservatives are way too slow in what they want to push. And obviously they should be against this because it's against their conservative principles. But yet, it's too little too late now. It's going to get signed. There's nothing we can do about it. But what is their plan for the future? This is what I would like to hear, because we may be Trudeau may ratify the Global Compact for Migration on behalf of Canada, but does this mean that if Scheer ends up coming into office in next year, is he going to pull out of the Global Compact for Migration? I mean, personally, he's been quite silent on this whole thing. Really, I've only heard Michelle Rempel bring this up. I haven't really heard any other Conservative MPs bringing this up. And even so, Michelle Rempel only brought it up because she was getting pestered by her constituents to do something about it because she's the immigration critic. So we've been failed once again by the CPC. It's absolutely ridiculous that they waited this long and they've done this little to actually fight back against the Global Compact for Migration. But I expect that sometime in the future, they're actually going to say that all along they were in agreement with it. We already know that Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives agreed with the Paris Climate Agreement, and that was another thing that takes away a sovereignty of a nation to decide for itself. I mean, the whole thing is just a con. That's exactly what the Paris Climate Agreement was. It was a con because you were still going, because businesses were still going to pollute, but now you have to pay into this global cabal of people. You're going to have to pay them in order just to pollute, and they'll issue carbon credits in return. So it's just, this is exactly what the Global Compact for Migration is, and we already see how the Canadian immigration system is being stretched to the brink. I mean, we already have the homeless shelters, which are at capacity in Toronto, and most of them by now are filled up with people who have crossed our border illegally. We see how the healthcare system is getting strained even more than it already is, because a lot of the people who come by, now they have access to their free healthcare. They're going to go and use it, which means there's less resources out there for Canadians who have actually paid their taxes for these services. And we also see how the welfare system, these people are getting massive checks. Some of these families get checks as much as $50,000 every year. That's a ridiculous amount. And we're just going to see more and more of that with this Global Compact for Migration. So once again, the Conservatives have abandoned their principles, they have abandoned their base, and they're doing next to nothing to fight back against the Trudeau government. This is why people bring up the fact that Conservatives conserve very little. This is why a lot of Conservatives are called cuck-conservatives. It's because all they do is they bitch and moan and whine, but they don't actually do anything to fight back. And this is another case when it comes to the Global Compact for Migration. Just had to get that off my chest. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.